The Rhine River churned like a beast awakened, its dark waters slamming against the makeshift pontoon bridges, as General George S. Patton's Third Army surged across in the dead of night on March 22, 1945. Explosions lit the sky, German artillery, screaming defiance from the eastern bank. But nothing could stop the American tide. Amid the chaos, Captain Elias Thorne gripped his M1 rifle, his boots sinking into the mud as he leaped from a landing craft, heart pounding with the fury of 1,000 storms. This wasn't just a crossing, it was the dagger aimed at Hitler's heart. But what Thorne didn't know yet was that this night would unearth a secret so profound, it would shatter the German high command and force Eisenhower himself to utter words that echoed through history. If that opening gripped you like a vice, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because what comes next will keep you glued to your seat until the very end. Let's dive into the untold story. Elias Thorne was no ordinary soldier. At 28, he was a linguistics expert from Boston, drafted straight out of Harvard where he'd buried himself in ancient texts and modern dialects. His gift for languages had landed him in Army intelligence, but Patton's aggressive push through Europe had pulled him into the front lines. Thorne's unit, a ragtag reconnaissance squad dubbed the Ghost Riders, specialized in slipping behind enemy lines to scout bridges, roads, and weak points. On this fateful night, their mission was simple: secure a foothold on the east bank before the main force arrived. But simplicity in war was a lie. As the first waves hit the shore, machine gun fire raked the water. Thorne dove behind a shattered tree stump. His squad mates, Sergeant Mike Riley, a burly Irishman from Chicago, and Private Lena Vasquez, a sharp-eyed codebreaker from New Mexico, scrambling beside him. "Keep moving," Thorne shouted over the din. They pushed forward, dodging craters and fallen comrades, the air thick with credite and fear. Riley fired his bar, cutting down a German silhouette in the fog. Vasquez, unflinching, relayed coordinates into her radio, her voice steady as steel. They reached a bombed-out village by dawn, the Rhine's eastern edge a labyrinth of ruins. That's when the first twist hit. While clearing a half-collapsed church, Thorne stumbled upon a hidden cellar. Inside, amid crates of ammunition, lay a cache of documents, not just maps, but encrypted telegrams stamped with the Reich's eagle. Thorne's pulse quickened. He cracked the code in minutes, his mind racing through substitution ciphers he'd studied in dusty libraries. The messages revealed a desperate German counterattack, planned for the next day, involving elite SS divisions, funneled from the north. But buried deeper was something else, a reference to Operation Schatten, a shadow operation involving a high-level defector within Allied command. "Captain, this can't be right," Vasquez whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the pages. "It mentions Eisenhower, says they've got dirt on him, something from his past that could turn the war." Thorne froze. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower was the unassailable architect of victory in Europe. Questioning him was heresy, but the documents were authentic, down to the watermarks. Riley grunted. "We take this back. Patton will want to see it." They stuffed the papers into their packs and fought their way out. German patrols closing in. A firefight erupted in the village square, bullets whizzing, grenades exploding. Riley took a graze to the arm, but they escaped, linking up with advancing American tanks by midday. Patton himself arrived that afternoon, his ivory-handled pistols gleaming as he strode through the mud. The general was a whirlwind, barking orders, his voice like thunder. "Boys, we've got the bastards on the run. The Rhine's ours." But when Thorne presented the documents in a hasty briefing tent, Patton's eyes narrowed. He read in silence, his face hardening. "Schatten, shadow. This smells like a trap, or worse." He summoned his staff, tension crackling in the air. Word spread quickly. The crossing wasn't just a military triumph. It had pierced a veil of intrigue. As the Third Army consolidated its bridgehead, escalating tension gripped the ranks. German counterattacks came fierce and fast, panzer divisions roaring from hidden forests, artillery barrages turning the landscape to hell. Thorne's squad was thrust into the fray, defending a key road junction. In one brutal clash, Vasquez saved Thorne's life, spotting a sniper just in time. "We're family now, Cap," she said, bandaging a shallow wound on his leg. Their bond deepened amid the carnage, emotional layers peeling back. Thorne confessed his doubts about the war, how his father's death in the Great War had haunted him. Riley shared stories of his kids back home, his voice cracking. These moments humanized the chaos, forging unbreakable ties. But the real storm brewed higher up. Patton, ever the maverick, radioed Eisenhower at SHAEF headquarters in Reims, France. The conversation was classified, but leaks trickled down. Eisenhower, calm and methodical, listened as Patton relayed the findings. "George, if this is true, it could unravel everything," Ike said, his Kansas drawl steady. But Patton pressed, "What dirt, sir? The Krauts think they've got something on you." Silence stretched, then Eisenhower dropped the bomb. Words that would shock not just Patton, but ripple through German intelligence. What Eisenhower said was this: "My ancestors were German, George, from the Rhine Valley itself. But I chose America, and if the Nazis want to use that against me, let them. Broadcast it wide. Tell the German soldiers they're fighting a man of their own blood, who's seen the light of freedom." It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. Born from the documents Thorne had uncovered, Eisenhower's German roots were no secret in historical circles. But in 1945, amid the fury of war, revealing it deliberately was unprecedented. Patton, stunned at first, grinned like a wolf. "By God, Ike, that'll break their spirit." He ordered the message disseminated via leaflets, radio broadcasts, and captured German loudspeakers. "Soldiers of the Reich," the announcement blared, "your enemy is led by a son of Germany who rejects Hitler's madness. Lay down your arms. The Rhine calls you home." The effect was electric. German deserters began trickling in by evening, whispers of doubt spreading through their lines. One captured officer, interrogated by Thorne, confessed, "We thought Eisenhower was just another Yankee butcher. But if he's one of us, maybe the Führer's wrong." The twist deepened. Among the defectors was a man claiming to be a distant relative of Eisenhower, planted as part of Operation Schatten to sow discord. But the plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of weakening Allied resolve, it unified them. Patton's troops, inspired, pushed harder, capturing Oppenheim and advancing miles inland. Yet tension escalated. Thorne's squad uncovered more. The defector relative was a fake, a deep cover agent meant to assassinate Patton during a victory parade, planned in the newly captured town of Oppenheim. The agent's codename was Schattenwolf, a ruthless operative trained in Berlin's darkest espionage schools. In a heart-pounding sequence that pushed the squad to their limits, Thorne and Vasquez infiltrated a heavily guarded German command post. Under the cover of a moonless night, navigating booby-trapped ruins littered with tripwires and hidden mines, rain poured relentlessly, turning the ground into a slick mire as they crawled through shattered walls and avoided searchlight sweeps. Riley, positioned on a nearby ridge with his Bar automatic rifle, provided crucial covering fire, his bursts echoing like thunder to draw away patrols. Inside the dimly lit, rain-soaked concrete bunker, Thorne and Vasquez finally confronted the agent, a tall, sharp-featured man in a disguised American uniform, his eyes cold and calculating. The standoff was chilling. Shadows danced from a single, flickering lantern as Thorne stepped forward, documents in hand. "You're no kin to Ike," Thorne snarled, his voice low and accusatory, piecing together the forgery from subtle linguistic slips in the man's fabricated Rhine Valley dialect, words that no true local would mispronounce. The agent smirked at first, denying everything, but tension snapped like a wire when he lunged. A brutal struggle ensued in the cramped space, knives flashing in the low light, fists connecting with grunts of pain, overturned crates scattering papers and ammunition across the wet floor. Vasquez, quick and precise, circled behind and subdued him with a single, muffled shot to the shoulder, non-lethal, but enough to drop him writhing. They bound him swiftly, extracting a full confession under Thorne's intense interrogation. The assassination plot was the centerpiece of Operation Schatten's escalation. Word reached Patton by dawn. His response was fury incarnate, eyes blazing, face red as he slammed his fist on a field map table. "Those sons of bitches thought they could touch me. We'll bury them." He immediately ramped up the offensive, ordering waves of Sherman tanks to blitz through weakened German defenses, columns of steel roaring forward in a thunderous push that shattered enemy lines and captured miles of territory in hours. In the aftermath of the bunker raid, during a brief lull amid the advancing chaos, emotional depth hit its peak. Thorne, exhausted and mud-streaked, sat with Vasquez behind a bombed-out farmhouse wall. He grappled openly with his own buried heritage, his mother's family tracing back to German immigrants who'd fled the old country generations ago. "Am I fighting my own blood out here?" he confided, voice cracking for the first time. Staring at his hands as if seeing ghosts, Vasquez met his gaze steadily, her sharp eyes softening. "Blood doesn't define us, Elias. Choices do. You chose to fight For what's right, that's what makes you American. In that raw, honest moment, something deeper sparked between them. A quiet understanding born from shared hell. But war allowed no respite. Their intimate exchange was shattered by a sudden, massive German counter-assault artillery shells screaming down like vengeful gods, exploding in geysers of earth and fire. Panzers emerged from the tree line, machine guns chattering. In the frenzy, a half-track carrying wounded soldiers took a direct hit, bursting into flames. Riley, ever the rock of the squad, charged through the inferno without hesitation. Bullets whizzing past, he dragged a screaming comrade from the burning vehicle, shielding him with his own body until they reached cover. But a final shell fragment caught him fatal. He collapsed, blood pooling, managing a weak grin. "Tell my kids, I love him." His death gutted the squad, Thorne and Vasquez kneeling beside him in stunned silence, tears mixing with rain. It was a strong, heartbreaking character moment that ignited unbreakable rage. Fueling their resolve for the fights ahead, the narrative raced forward relentlessly. By March 24th, just 2 days after the initial crossing, the bridgehead had massively expanded pontoon bridges reinforced, endless columns of American forces, trucks, and tanks pouring across the Rhine in an unstoppable flood. Eisenhower himself visited the front lines under heavy guard, his jeep splashing through mud as he shook hands with mud-caked, weary soldiers, offering quiet words of encouragement that lifted spirits sky-high. In a private moment away from the troops, under a makeshift tent flapping in the wind, Eisenhower pulled Patton aside. The Supreme Commander elaborated on his bold revelation, voice steady but personal. "George, that statement about my roots wasn't just tactics to rattle them. It was deeply personal. My family's from Anhausen, a little village right near this damned river. In a way, I crossed the Rhine in spirit long before you and your boys did it with blood and steel." Patton, the fiery warrior, stood uncharacteristically moved, his usual bluster gone. He snapped a crisp salute, eyes respectful. "Sir, you've shocked them more than any bomb we could have dropped." Back in Berlin, German high command reeled in disarray. Intercepted radio messages painted a picture of utter panic. Goebbels furiously scribbling counter-propaganda scripts late into the night, ranting about traitorous bloodlines. But it was too late. Morale plummeted like a stone. Desertion spiked dramatically. Entire units surrendered en masse, white flags waving from trenches as soldiers streamed toward American lines, muttering about Eisenhower's words hitting too close to home. Thorne's role in unraveling the plot became legendary within the Third Army. Patton personally pinned a field promotion on him, captain to major, right there in the mud, clapping him on the shoulder. "Your brains turned the tide more than my tanks, son. Damn fine work." But surprises kept mounting, refusing to let the story slow. In a daring night raid on a foreboding medieval castle perched on a hillside overlooking the Rhine, Thorne's squad, now reinforced but forever scarred by Riley's loss, discovered a hidden underground lab. It wasn't filled with weapons or V2 parts, but sophisticated forgery equipment, printing presses, fake passports, altered photographs, and files detailing false identities. Operation Schatten was far broader than imagined, a sprawling network of imposters, embedded deep in allied ranks, from clerks to officers, all poised to sabotage supply lines, spread disinformation, and strike at critical moments. The biggest twist came days later. Back at SHAEF headquarters in Reims, Thorne, summoned for his expertise, pored over captured files late into the night. His decryption skills exposed the unthinkable. One key imposter was embedded right in Eisenhower's inner circle, a trusted aide who'd been feeding sensitive intel straight to Berlin for months, subtly delaying orders and misdirecting resources. The arrest was tense and dramatic. MPs bursting into a staff meeting, the traitor pale and protesting as cuffs clicked shut. Eisenhower stood witness, his face a mask of steel resolve. "This war tests us all to our core," he said calmly as the man was led away. "But America endures. We endure." As April dawned with budding spring light piercing the smoke, the Third Army spearheaded the relentless drive deep into the heart of Germany. Towns liberated one after another, roads clogged with retreating enemy columns, the momentum unbreakable. Amid the advance, Thorne and Vasquez found stolen moments of quiet humanity, sharing rations by a campfire, hands brushing, eyes meeting with unspoken promises. They shared a quiet vow under the stars: survive this madness, return home together, build something real and lasting. Their romance bloomed subtly but profoundly, emotional anchors holding them steady in the storm of war. Patton's audacity reached its peak weeks later. At the Elbe River, where American and Soviet forces linked up in a historic handshake that signaled the Reich's final collapse. But through it all, the Rhine crossing remained the unbreakable pivot. The moment everything shifted, Eisenhower's words, born from that fateful night on March 22nd, echoed in every subsequent victory, a psychological dagger that hastened the end. In the end, as Victory in Europe Day approached and church bells rang across the continent, Major Elias Thorne stood alone on the Rhine's western bank. At dusk, staring west toward home, the churning river now calm, reflecting the setting sun. The war had forged him in fire, broken him in ways he'd carry forever, but ultimately redeemed him, proving that courage, truth, and choice could triumph over blood and shadows.